So you really have the big mega firms, the giants of this whole industry here. Northrop Grumman, Boeing.
With a security station here at the front where they check out the cars and look underneath.
Yeah, so maybe you should put the camera down now. Because
you just never know who's watching over here.
All right, so can we just go over what you have?
Sure.
At the Washington Post, Priest and her team compiled what they found.
This is the pictures that I went up to that public parking lot and it was totally legal to be there.
For the rest of my life, I will never see the world the same way again, especially around Washington.
So had it not been for the leaves off the trees and at night, you would never see this thing.
And yet it's gigantic.
Yeah.
These buildings that they might only be 4 stories high, but they go down 10 stories. And there's a whole world down there, like shops and places to eat that you don't know about. That's just for them.
They had uncovered a new secret world that had grown up in the years after 9/11.
You could put the dots on the map. You had an alternative geography of the United States, a secret geography that is so important, that guides how this country keeps itself safe, and yet it is not revealed to the public, even though it may be next to your back door.
They didn't put it in one place. If they had, it would have been the size of the District of Columbia. What they did instead was scatter it around so it fits into the fabric of metropolitan Washington and on up into Baltimore, and it looks like commercial office space. Huge new bureaucracy that you can't really see.
More fierce fighting between U.S. forces and Shiite militia.
In Iraq, by 2004, the war was going badly.
It was one of several places where there was violence in Iraq over the weekend.
The number of American troops killed is now over 1,000. Reports of border attacks in Baghdad. Several others were wounded when a car bomb.
Rumsfeld's light force wasn't able to stop the growing insurgency.
There aren't enough troops, and worse, they're in the middle of an insurgency that they don't know how to conquer.
And they hadn't found any sign of those weapons of mass destruction.
Early on in the war, it seemed quite clear that they were not going to find major stockpiles of weapons, that we were looking at kind of an empty shell.
David Kay had been given the job of finding the weapons.
From very early on, I said, things are not panning out the way you thought they existed here, and it was specific cases, whether we're talking about the aluminum tubes, or we're talking about the nuclear program in general, or the biological program.
After 8 months of searching Iraq for weapons of mass destruction, David Kay reached a simple conclusion. There aren't any.
The political stakes are rising in the overestimation of Iraq's weapons.
It was an intelligence failure that reverberated throughout Washington.
One of the most damaging intelligence failures in recent U.S. history, and says the harm to U.S. credibility will take years to undo.
I think the intelligence community understood that if the American people and the policymakers really understood the message I was delivering, that there would have to be a major shakeup of the way American intelligence is done, because this was just inexcusable.
George Tenet and the CIA took most of the blame.
Outraged lawmakers are demanding to know whether the CIA was pressured to come up with answers the administration wanted to justify going to war.
The bipartisan 9/11 Commission proposed stripping the CIA of its oversight of national intelligence.
The 9/11 Commission actually suggested that the country have a director of intelligence to make sure that all the different agencies would share their dots, and who could be in charge of the agencies in order to make sure that they weren't overlapping, that they were playing well together, that they were getting efficiencies out of the system.
Today I'm asking Congress to create the position of a National Intelligence Director. The National Intelligence
Congress starts working on the bill, and they produce a bill in almost no time at all. And there's very little debate, and there's very little consideration.
As the bill made its way through Congress, the existing intelligence agencies pushed back. The Secretary of Defense led the charge.
The Secretary of Defense was not anxious to lose power, direct authority over the intelligence assets in the Department of Defense. He felt very strongly and fought very hard not to lose that authority.
The authority of the DNI, which was written into the law as it was drafted, was gradually reduced day after day after day to the point where it became almost meaningless.
John Negroponte was the first nominee for Director of National Intelligence.
I got a call from Andrew Card, the Chief of Staff of the President, asking me, how would you like to be the first Director of National Intelligence? I didn't know anything about how Congress had envisaged the position or anything else, so the first thing I did was to download the law, all 200 and plus pages of it, to get some kind of sense of what was envisaged.
To run America's $80 billion intelligence community, Negroponte was given a small staff and a few rooms in the old executive office building.
The actual director's office is non-existent. There wasn't even somebody to answer the phones when I first got there.
I recall one time the Secretary of Defense coming into the office and the Secretary of State walking by and peeking in and just chuckling. And it was all funny to see them crowded around this small table, kind of the national security team.
We covered the walls with butcher paper and said, well, how about this organizational structure? I mean, we really did. And then try to lay it out.
Negroponte quickly discovered he had little authority to bring order to the sprawling intelligence community.
There were some things that were lacking, authority to hire and fire. I believe that it would have been better to have more budgetary authorities than in fact I actually ended up having.
If you're going to maintain true authorities over a subordinate organization, you have to have some control over policy formulation of that organization and also the resources that are applied to it. And much of that does not exist in that position. So you have a sort of an emperor without any clothes.
Negroponte served as Director of National Intelligence for just 2 years. In the 6 years it has existed, there have been 5 different DNIs.
We gave the DNI a lot of responsibilities and high expectations. In my view, we did not give that person the authority over the intelligence community to realize the benefits that were supposed to be derived.
Despite the inability to control other intelligence agencies, the DNI did what other bureaucracies inside top-secret America do. It grew.
It started out 11 people in the old executive office building, but that wasn't big enough. So they moved to some of the priciest real estate in the Washington area. And now they are gigantic. 500,000 square feet, 5 Walmarts stacked on top of each other. And if you ask most people in the intelligence world, they don't know exactly what they do still.
It's the inauguration day of the nation's first African-American president.
In 2009, the new president would inherit a war in Iraq, a war in Afghanistan, and terrorism threats abroad and at home.
This will be the largest security challenge here since 9/11.
The tightest security for an inauguration ever.
There had even been a threat to the president-elect.
A week before, they had gotten a reasonable tip that there was a plot on the part of a Somalian immigrant to disrupt the inauguration, and they took that seriously.
There was enough there that you understood, even if it turned out later not to be real, they had an obligation to take it seriously.
The Bush administration national security team briefed the incoming national security team about that threat, and it was mentioned that perhaps they should consider canceling the inauguration.
But all of top-secret America was on hand to protect the president.
What was happening behind the scenes was phenomenal. It was an unprecedented virtual security cocoon.
We have the Intelligence Operations Center, Tactical Operations Center, and then we have